From Montana's news leader, this is the MTN Noon News.
Good afternoon. Thanks for joining us on the Noon News. I'm Andrea Lutz. Staffing and funding is hitting ambulance services in our state hard, but a group in Billings is trying to save the industry. More on that in a minute, but first. Missoula will soon offer monoclonal antibody treatments. Here's today's leading look. There are now 2 clinics in our state. The other one is in Butte. Governor Greg Gianforte called it a life-saving tool to free up those ICU beds. And the governor says the best way to still fight COVID-19 is to get vaccinated. There's no word yet on when those clinics will start operations. Meanwhile, the state is trying to address a nursing shortage, but not everyone in the medical community thinks it's being done the right way. Last week, the governor announced any out-of-state nurses who move to Montana for work can be reimbursed for moving costs up to $12,000. Opponents say that money needs to be used on in-state nurses and retention bonuses, along with other benefits. In Houston, the FBI has joined a criminal investigation into the deaths of 8 people at the Astro World Music Festival last Friday. Witnesses say the victims were crushed when the crowd of 50,000 people started to surge towards the stage as performer Travis Scott was getting ready to do his performance. Several lawsuits are now filed against that rapper. And Missoula has no shortage of bars or breweries, but these spots cater to a crowd that's obviously above the drinking age. Thanks, though, to a new business opening later this month, a younger audience will finally be able to find their groove. Legacy Lounge will offer DJs, live bands, and dancing the first half of the night to an underage crowd. Then they will reopen later for those 21 and older. Well, owners say they're taking safety incredibly seriously in order to have a successful place for everyone to gather. That's today's leading look.
Well, we have an Alberta clipper pushing a cold front through the area. Hasn't made it yet, but it will start to make its way through, and it's going to kick up snow and rain out ahead of that. If you don't get any of that, you're at least going to get some cloud cover. Now, temperatures moving to the central and eastern part of the state today going to be a little bit warmer than normal, but that cold front will definitely affect those temperatures by tomorrow. You can see there it is. High pressure trying to insulate central parts and eastern parts of the region, maybe from getting some of that moisture. Out west, you're looking pretty good in terms of trying to maybe at least see some decent precipitation. But here are your temperatures tomorrow. You'll notice a lot more 40s across the board, even some 30s, and some off to our east try to get up to the 50s as well. But our temperatures trying to come back down are seasonal. Will that last, though? I'll let you know the main forecast coming up.
It's generally anybody's worst day if they have to get in one of these, but imagine how bad it would be if you needed an ambulance and one didn't show up. That's becoming an ever-increasing possibility across Montana for 2 issues, staffing and funding. So one group met in Billings.
This child restraint system, so that we can safely restrain a child in the ambulance, is $1,000. Just this, with webbing and hooks.
And that's one of the cheaper pieces of equipment Joel Kelm is required to carry in his Beartooth EMS ambulances.
About $41,000.
Hard to make that up.
It's very hard to make that up.
It's hard because the U.S. government's 2 primary healthcare systems, Medicare and Medicaid, usually don't come close to covering a patient call, often paying more than 30% below operating costs. And that's only if these critical care providers actually transport the patient somewhere.
Maybe 25 of those patients out of the 100 that we didn't transport to the hospital because they didn't need a transport. Maybe they just needed some first aid care or they refuse any care. We don't get any money back on those patients.
Some may think, hey, that's great, a way to game the system, get licensed care without paying for anything. But now the ambulance service eats that cost, which means they can't afford to pay their workers as much.
EMT kind of starting wage in this area is anywhere from, $12 an hour to maybe $15 an hour, $16 an hour. And literally you can go to Taco Bell and make more money than that right now. Every manager I talk to wants to pay more to these people that deserve more, but there's not the funding.
And that was the real reason for Monday's meeting at the Beartooth offices. Ambulance directors and related officials across Montana gathered in person or on Zoom. Senators John Tester and Steve Daines even sent representatives. Unbeknownst to most, EMS services are not considered essential in Montana.
You know, ultimately it means that when someone calls 911 or calls for a transport, someone may not show up, and subsequently it means that we don't get the grants, we don't get the funding.
The group's main goal is to craft a white paper, an explainer document often used to start legislation. They hope to develop the framework at meeting number 2 next Monday. In the meantime, their leftover expenses are getting paid 2 ways. By you.
If I say I bill $1,000 to Medicaid, and all I get as a reimbursement is $260, and I need $1,000 to operate, I have to get the $700 someplace else.
And so you have to pass that $700 on
To somebody else.
Somebody else, either a private insurance or a private citizen.
Right.
Or by themselves.
You know, I give up my paycheck a lot to make sure that staff are paid and we can keep the doors open, keep serving our hospitals.
But when that runs out, the much bigger problems start. Casey Conlon, MTN News.